Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video. And this video is going to be a continuation in my Moon to Earth to Mars video that I'm putting together. Now in the last video we finished setting everything up for the XR5 to make the journey from the Moon, to make that 5-day trip to fall from the Moon down to Earth. And then once we get to Earth, we're going to do a small trans-Martian injection burn so that we can go out to Mars. And the whole point of this flight is to kind of show that we can get a huge delta V savings by, dropping from the Moon down to the Earth and then going out to Mars. Now, of course, you have to make the argument that you have to get to the Moon in the first place, but all that aside, some future space colony was all set up on the Moon, then one way they could get to Mars would be using this method. And from their perspective, at least, the total cost would be a whole lot cheaper than it would be from going from the Earth to Mars. Okay, we are only 3,000 seconds away from periapsis. That's the time, of course, that we're going to do our eject burn. So we're going to start setting up a maneuver for that here pretty soon, but let's get in a little closer first. Want to be maybe, 1,000 seconds out or something like that. Okay, here about 1,500 seconds, that's a good time. Now you can see we're, getting in really close to the Earth. And first thing first, let's again just adjust here to make sure that our relative inclination is at a low number and stays at a low number. So make sure the line of nodes is matched up with our current position.
Rotation. Translation.
Then I will translate to bring down the relative inclination. And right here is basically 0, but I still have another 1,000 seconds to go forward. So I'm going to overshoot just a tiny, tiny bit in this direction because you can see that that number continues to count down. And it looks like maybe this is seconds almost. So we could probably even calculate how much to overshoot by, but I'm just going to go with that number. Okay, now in order to be precise with our TMI burn, we could set up a maneuver in TransX, but we'll go ahead and take advantage of the knowledge that Dimitri has imparted upon us in the IMFD videos. So we'll set up a plan to go to Mars that way. Okay, I believe we need to reference the Sun, target Mars. Actually think if I'm doing this right. It might be reference Earth, target Mars. I'm still learning how to use IMFD. No, okay, so it's, yeah, you do have to reference the Sun and then target Mars. Then we'll turn auto zoom off, we'll turn display on. Then we'll turn plan on, even though we don't have a plan yet, but we will in a moment. And sphere of influence. Okay, now I'm going to bring up TransX on this side and then bring up interplanetary MFD on this side. Go to course, go to delta V, and we need a delta V of about 590. This will actually get lower the closer we get to the Earth, so it is probably going to be more like 400. The time, though, is going to be here. So about 1,000. So we'll just do set 1400. Wait for that to hit 00. Enter. Now we've got the same time. And then the delta V that we need is going to be, it's all prograde. So we'll just do set. And then again, we can use this number if we want, but we know that by the time we get to periapsis, this is going to be closer to 500. So I'm actually going to put in 500 instead of that 585. Okay, now we're basically done with TransX. Let's bring up interplanetary MFD on this side. Let's go to menu, and we need to share the plan, or we need to share that side, so 0. Now map. And I guess it forgot that I had Mars, so let me target Mars again. And display, auto zoom off, page over to here, plan. So now we've got the delta V plan from this side. And turn on SOI. Now, page here, because we don't want reference Sun, we want reference Mars. And we want to work with our plan here until we have a PEA of, 0. Okay, so first of all, let's just see what happens if we put in some more delta V or take away some delta V. Okay, that's making the PEA go up, so we probably have more delta V here than we need. You can see as I take away delta V, the PEA is coming way down. And if we get lucky, we'll be able to do this just by adjusting delta V and not have to play with date and everything, but chances are we won't be that lucky. Oh wow, that's really lucky. Okay, so back to an adjustment of 1, the PEA reached a high point, or rather reached a low point and then started going back up. So that's really lucky that we're getting that accurate without even having to do a bunch of date adjustment. So we're down to 10,000 kilometers. Okay, you saw there it went back up. So we'll go to 10,000. Now we want to go to the date. I don't want to move the date any more than I have to, because the date is at, we want to do the burn at periapsis. We'll get maximum engine efficiency if we do the date at periapsis. So just a small adjustment here or there. Okay, that's bringing it down. So let's see what happens if we say that we're going to do the date. We're going to just bump this forward just a little bit. That raises the PEA out, but now let's go to delta V, or prograde. Okay, so that's not really improving, so let's try the other direction. Instead of going forward in time, let's go back a little bit. Now let's do a delta V change. And so both ways is kind of making things worse. But again, if we know that as we work with these variables, you kind of overshoot in one direction and come back in the other. And that's what we need to do here. I just have to figure out which way to go. We could also apply a little bit of an inward outward. That could help, maybe. Okay, that direction's not helping. And it's not really having a lot of impact. So let's reset that to 0 for now. And let's just try to get this with a date and prograde. So 1x date adjustment. Let's go maybe backwards just a small amount. And let's see now if we add some prograde back in, or take out prograde. Okay, so maybe go backwards a little bit more. That seems to kind of just be making things worse, but maybe if I do that, because I'm trying to keep the burn right there at periapsis, so I don't want to adjust the date by much. But what if I now do some inward outward? And that's not really helping. Okay, so it looks like probably we're going to have to bump the date forward by a little bit. Careful not to do it at 10x though. So let's take it out till the PEA is like 100. Now let's go prograde. And yeah, that kind of brought it down. Now we're down to 7. So let's go to the date again, go forward. Couple clicks, 3 clicks. Now adjust the prograde. And now we're down to 3,000. Okay. And again, forward with the date just a little bit. Okay, and just a little bit more and we'll have it. Okay, previous. And that has our PEA all the way down to just 500 kilometers, which is really good. But if we can, yeah, we'd actually like to have it about negative 2,000. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. Now, the beauty of interplanetary MFD is that you can just go to Page, Burn Vector, Auto Burn, and it will do the burn for you. We could also set this up. We could also set up the maneuver in TransX. We're not going to do the maneuver in TransX because it's not as accurate as IMFD, but just to kind of show, if we wanted to use TransX instead, we would simply go for just turn maneuver mode on this side. And we would set the date to our PEMJD. So we do an adjustment here. And we need to move that forward to 4039. We're saying that's when we're going to do the burn. That's too far. And for the velocity, we would put in prograde and we would just enter that number. But again, remembering that as we get closer to periapsis, that's going to go down. So we would probably start with a 500 dV figure. And then we would have to go to escape plan. Not escape plan, rather, but go forward on this side to the eject plan. And we'd have to erase this prograde that we have in here in order for TransX to identify the maneuver that we're trying to set up. So we'd reset prograde, then reset outward. And now TransX identifies that maneuver. So we'll go back on this side, VW over to the maneuver. And if we actually, we view maneuver on that side and then watch the closest approach over here. And we probably don't need that much delta V. So let's start by subtracting some. You can see that's bringing the closest approach down. And we would just do that until the closest approach was as low as it would get. And when you get down below, I think 5 gigameters, you can actually go forward. No, not quite there yet. I was going to say you can actually view the encounter, but maybe it's 1 gigameter. Anyway, you get to this point where you can finally view the encounter in stage 3, and that helps you, dial things in more accurately. So once we have that, we could then just go to a micro setting on the date and try to work it out so that we could actually arrive and be there at Mars. So go overshoot that way a little bit. As we add in more prograde, you can see it's continuing to come down. So maybe go out that way a little bit. And then back and forth per the usual method. But the reason I'm not going to do this with TransX this time is because I'm very much in agreement with Dimitri that you should use the right tool for the job. TransX is great for setting up plans, complex plans, like the one we're doing here, where we're going from the moon to the Earth out to Mars, but it's not good at being accurate at actually doing the burn. IMFD is very accurate at actually doing the burn. But, this is what I would do if I were going to use TransX to do this burn. I just keep going back and forth here until hopefully we eventually get the darn minimum altitude down to something reasonable. So anyway, you get the idea there. And since I'm not going to do the maneuver, I'm not going to bother refining that. So let's bring interplanetary MFD back up. And I don't know if it actually, okay, yeah, it's still waiting. I was going to say, since I turned off interplanetary MFD, I wasn't sure if it was still going to do the burn. So we can warp time forward at 100 and it'll automatically go down to 10. That's unfortunate. That happens from time to time. Fortunately, Orbiter's pretty good at saving your state. So if I go D3, D9 client rescue, it should have a very recent save state. So once it reloads,
warning conditions detected.
that's not even the right mission. Let me bring up state saver, and I'll bring up the most recent state save, which should be, I guess it'll be that one. And hopefully IMFD, all that plans is still set up, because if not, I'll have to redo that.
All Vanguard systems nominal.
Okay, yeah, it still has this, because you can see our PEA is negative, 1,900, right where we want it to be. So now let's BV and AB to auto burn. And try this again. Warp time forward, and when it gets down to 200 or something, it'll automatically back down to 10. And then it'll automatically orient the vessel. And it'll do the burn. And you can see our total cost is 434.5. So that's to go from the Earth to Mars for, many times cheaper than what it would cost if we were doing the traditional. And that's it, the burn's already over. And once the burn's complete, just like with TransX,
rotation,
you want to go to translation and do a little bit of refinement to bring your PEA down where you want, and that's all it took with just one forward burst of translation, and our PEA is all the way down to negative 2,000. Okay, so let's warp time forward and head off to Mars.
rotation,
And we're actually going to go to Phobos, so I'm going to combine a couple of things in this flight. Instead of actually landing at Mars, we'll do an aero capture at Mars and get aligned with Phobos, and then land on Phobos like I tried to do in one of my other missions.
translation, rotation,
But didn't bring enough DV with me to complete that. But this time, Delta V is not a problem. We can see we really barely used any fuel, because all we had to do was get into orbit around the moon, which is pretty cheap, then fall from the moon to the Earth, which is a 800 Delta V or so, then that 434 or whatever it was. Yeah, 434 to go to Mars. Okay, so now let's go forward faster. Out to 100,000. And we're going to get to Mars on, I don't know where it shows the MJD at, but here in a little bit we'll think about doing some kind of mid-course correction, since we're going to try to target Phobos instead. Although we're not really going to worry about the timing of where Phobos is at in its orbit. We're just going to make sure that when we arrive at Mars, we are at the line of nodes between Earth, or between our vessel and Phobos. So probably around here. Let me check transects for something here real quick. I can't tell according to IMFD, just because I'm not that familiar with it, what our MJD is going to be when we get to Mars. But I can tell with transects. So 5.8. 58497. Okay, so we've still got a ways to go. Okay, now before we go too far along, well, let's get closer. Yeah, so continue warping time forward for now, at least until this shows the closest approach.
Translation. Rotation.
At its lowest number. And then I'll work out the timing again, because I want to arrive at Mars when I'm at the line of nodes between Mars and Phobos. And this is starting to count back up, so we'll do the maneuver now. Let me bring up transects on this side also. And we'll go forward here, and we want Phobos. And I don't even really need to set up a maneuver. Actually, I just need to bump translation around until the line of nodes is where it needs to be.
Translation. Rotation.
But I do want to be oriented basically prograde, so just do that.
Translation.
Actually, what I want to do here also is set up advanced on, auto plan off, and what I want is cruise plan, not cruise plan, initial, not initial, through point, but I want the plan to be encounter. That way I can see this other data down here. And that's showing a retrograde inclination, which is not what I want. So translate that way. Okay, now you can see that according to this, when I arrive at Mars periapsis, I'm 90 degrees to the line of nodes, and that's not what I want. So and let me also view over to setup and change the graph projection, because I can't tell what I'm looking at with this goofy looking graph projection. Okay. Just bringing down the inclination. And we're almost there. Okay, now you can see that the line of nodes is basically going to be at my periapsis. Now I'll have to make a couple of changes as I, continue warp time forward and get closer to Mars, because that's not going to hold precisely, but should be fairly accurate. All right, let's go forward then by another probably 100 days because we're not going to get to Mars till 498. So 455, yeah, let's go forward 100 days.
Rotation.
And you can see that slip's kind of all over the place, but it'll kind of wobble in and out. Nevertheless, I brought the inclination down. I think that's probably the more important thing at this point. But in the amount of time that we've warped forward so far, the line of nodes has slipped completely sideways again. But that's transx for you. I'll actually have to ask Dimitri if there's a way to, and I'm sure there is, but if there's a way to use IMFD to figure out, you know, where the line of nodes will be when you get to Mars. So we're going to go 58455. That'll put us 100 days farther ahead than we were before, but we'll still be a month plus out from Mars. And then after that, we will wrap up this part of the video and move on to the next part. Okay, so we're at 58435. Okay, that's good enough for now.
Translation.
So without setting up a maneuver, because it's just not necessary, kind of just work with the translations. And once again, I have the line of nodes at periapsis. Okay, so I will call it apart here, and when we come back, we'll finish the trip over to Mars. And when we arrive at Mars, we're going to do, we're going to get aero captured, and we're going to have to do a little bit of plane alignment to get into plane with Phobos. And then we will do a little bit of orbiting around Mars in order to catch up to Phobos, but it'll all be very inexpensive to do because we'll be taking advantage of the Martian atmosphere. So the actual burn, the only fuel that we really need to burn at this point will be just a little bit of fuel to do a mid-course correction type of thing for Phobos, and that should be a small number. But then we'll have to do a braking burn when we get up next to Phobos in order to establish ourselves so that we're lockstep next to Phobos, and then we'll land at Howell Base. If you like this part of the video, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the don't like button. Leave a comment down below either way, and I will see you in the next part.